Well, I grew up on Long Island and moved to New York as soon as I could. I was supposed to be a doctor, but that didn't work. I was a painter. So, I left college and started painting and showed what I could. I mean, that's the short synopsis.
I guess it's my turn, huh? My mother took one look and she said, "Not me," put me under an airplane in Berlin Tempelhof. And the pilot, of course, couldn't get away with this screaming bundle underneath. And I only know all this because there's always somebody that tells you when you're older. And so, you have a start and then you live your life. And I ended up here. Second World War was what it was. And this was a little earlier yet, but it had started. So I was there, and I guess I talked, so I became a little bit more popular because the woman that told me all this mopped the floors there. She was a teenager and she was a prisoner of war. And so she was mopping there, and she said the only thing she could handle was somebody like me who interacted, even though I was so small. But what I had been told, because apparently I did things I shouldn't do, which I don't remember, a priest and a nun, the nun finally told me, said that I was a bastard and I would, when I died, I would have to burn in hell for eternity. And if I said 6 Ave Marias every day on my knees, kneeling in my clogs, then I could make it all a little better. So I didn't really know what a fire really was at that point. I was little. So I held my finger in a candle to test it, and I panicked. And the panic I remember, because no way was I going to go to hell. And I couldn't sleep for a while, and then I found a solution. I'm not going to die.
We've been up here since 1982, when I was trying to find a summer studio to get out of the city, like a lot of artists back then. It was a brutally hot summer in '81, boombox era, if any of you were in the city. And it was just horrible. And I swore I would never spend another summer in New York City. So I drew a circle on a map, 100 miles from the bridge. And this was the very outside edge of that circle. And as my father told me, why don't you look in Sullivan County? It's kind of depressed. So the prices were lower. Found an old hay barn in Coshecton Center and renovated it for a studio, for a weekend place. Spent summers there. Krista
Kind of.
thought she would never do it, but like a lot of us that wound up here, we fell in love with the area. Became full-time weekenders. And then eventually full-time people.
Do you remember the old meat market in Lake Huntington? We turned that into an artist place where they could have a free scholarship all summer. And on Nelson Road there, we had an old house, a downtown house. Susana Katzoff, you probably know all those people again. And so we had that, we ran that studio. That got in the newspapers all the time, but those people came and went, and they had a free summer, and that was fine. And I did that because in Cooper Union, my professor had said, you have to make up for what we gave you for free. And I did, and they were happy that we did that.
We started collaborating 40 years ago, and Krista suggested this project to me. She had suggested it to other people who turned her down, didn't want, they didn't want.
You want to know what my professor in Cooper Union said when I tried that on him? I didn't know him yet. He said, nobody touches my work.
Which I guess we should explain if people don't know. One of us will start a painting, and at some point you feel like you want to pass it over, and either of us can start the painting. You pass it to the other person, and that person can do anything they want to it. Add, subtract. So it goes back and forth. when you feel you've added or done whatever it is you want to that painting, you pass it back and forth again. And it doesn't matter how many times, it can go back and forth once or 10 or 20 times. It can take a day or years. Some of the work in here has been going back and forth for decades. Because sometimes it can be a slow process.
The only thing I'd like to add is it's not a parlor game. It sounds like it, but it's a very exciting dialogue without words. We never speak about it. We only show it on the canvas or whatever it is, you know. So
Yeah.
that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, the conversation. We don't talk about the individual pieces until it's done. The way it gets to be done is when you get it back, when either one of us first receives it, then if you make no changes, it's done. You know, if you make any changes, it goes to the other person. Has to go to the other person. But if you make no changes, you've declared it done.
But you heard me. It's not a parlor game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we take it very seriously. When you first get it back, you sit, you look, you analyze, you can wonder why
Swear.
that. You can swear. Every emotion comes into it, that's for sure. And sometimes it takes quite a while till you figure out why that changed, or if you like it, or if you want to keep it, or what you want to do next. So it engages your mind a lot.
And so we have learned to first, you know, really see through it or try to understand it. And we also realized we learned from each other. And so the whole thing became much more calming, you know, and we never had huge fights. But, you know, of course you get upset if somebody takes out what you just kind of lovingly put there, right? And that happened to him as much as to, you know. And but you get over it, you get through that, you understand you're doing something together, and there's a learning curve there, what that means, what you have to do. And that is what we're addicted to now, you know. I'm not saying we've become better people necessarily, you know, but we certainly don't have any rousing, you know, fights or door slamming or any of that.
I think, you know, like anybody, we have our favorite artists. I don't know that there's any specific artist that inspires this. I don't think so. I mean, obviously, it's pretty, you know, free-form stuff that not every one in art history leads to this, but
The other thing is we didn't really want to go public because we felt it was so private between us. Why would anybody even care, you know, or want to see it or have an opinion? So this developed slowly, but most people don't even know we do that. And so we don't really speak to other artists that much anymore, you know, we used to.
I think obviously, you know, if you're writing an art history treatise about what we do, there, you know, you could point to a Dadaist, you could point to an abstraction, you know, those kinds of things. But I don't think personally we've grown out of any one. They're just influences. I mean, in part, we talk about what Helene was just asking, you know, some of that when this happened, when that happened. Sometimes we talk about the challenge of that particular piece, you know, whether it was find the right color or it needed something in this area or it just wasn't telling enough story. So we talk about those issues.
I can only say mostly you talk to yourself when something went wrong because you kind of feel you didn't understand something, and vice versa. And so we both learned to even that. And we kind of hope politicians get to that point. I'm not kidding.
I think actually a better example is this red one here, at least what I can remember, um, because through there was more of that figure in the middle showing, and then these blue cardboard pieces were put in, and we talked about why that was necessary to make it. Um, it made it more interesting. It made it more mysterious. Uh, and then we were both struggling back and forth with that, what ultimately became that piece of glass that's over an eye of the figure. And so, we that's again, when we were done, we talked about that struggle to find the right object because it really, really, really needed the right thing in that spot.
If I may interrupt, the other interesting thing is that as years go by, and they do, for 40 years, um, you we both forget sometimes who exactly did what. And it doesn't matter, because we accept the piece but when we go far back, we suddenly say, did I do that or did he do that? And, it is, and we're both, we are equally, whatever it is, trained or, we can do the same thing the other person can do. So sometimes let's say you like something that you want to continue, you just do what that person did if you want to. If they whip it out, whatever, it's fun.
Oh, absolutely. There are at least
There are at least
I don't
10
know,
there now.
10 more back at the studio that are going back and forth. Actually, yeah, and we also can be working on several in our own hands at the same time, if that's what you mean. It's not just one piece going back and forth like ping pong ball.
But we do have separate studios, so we don't see each other work.
I think
It's not about liking.
that might be true, but I think as many times as you might think, oh, the other person will like this, you're wrong. Or, I might say, oh,
I
she's gonna,
second that. Yes,
he or she's gonna really hate this thing or this part or
but you
might
don't do it for
change.
that reason either.
But no, 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 no. It just is. It's right or wrong. It doesn't. It's unpredictable.
You have to do it for you,
Exactly.
and then whatever happens with the other person, that's more their problem than yours. And it goes vice. It happens to both of us.
And that's part of why you have to look so hard when you first get it back, because there's a reason why you might not be having a good reaction to that. You got to figure out, well, what was the good reason it got there in the first place. The way we make these, it's for ourselves, but obviously we like people to see it. And we think you have to look and discover what you see in it. We try to make something that makes you think.
We also try to give it more than one possible story. That's just us, I mean, we don't talk about that, but we do that. That there are more, there's not just one thought you can develop. You can really send it in several directions if you want to. And I mean, books sometimes are like that, or poems, So we figure, people have their own mind about things and their own background, and maybe that teaches them something else or that brings out something else. We just hope something comes out if they're even going to look. The personal relationship. We didn't even know we painted when we met. We both were volunteers at the youth hostels, the Washington one, We led trips, and I was a troubleshooter, stuff like that. And we got to know each other very well. And he's 20 years younger, so believe me, he had a mother. So I had to be very careful.
It took a few years before we started painting together.
working together is everything what we do with painting and work is a vehicle for what we want to get across to each other even, you know. It's like a dialogue, except there are no words. There's only whatever you call picture, I don't know, you know, it's shown. That's simple. It's like a vehicle for us. I mean, if we could do it with poetry, maybe we could do the same thing with poetry. Because, you know, it just happens to be painting. So it's something to look
I
at.
guess we have the same goal, and because of that, yeah, there's a cohesive look, and it seems like, I hope, each piece is the product of not one mind, but that it's not falling apart, you know. In the city, it used to have to go from 81st Street to 110th Street. That was not as easy. Now it's just a staircase.
When I was downtown, people used to want to know why on the subway I always had two canvases that were identical. You know why? Because I could put them together and they couldn't see what was inside.
Well, you know, there's one of us that never throws anything out.
I wonder who that is.
Yeah, so to some degree, we're both like that. But if you've been at our house, you know. But sometimes you go shopping for something you need. I mean, sometimes you come across something and that's the start of the painting.
And there's a lot of garbage that goes into these, you know, trash.
I mean, I think it's a good example because the bird's nest obviously is found, you know, and the wood it's sitting on had to be, you know, cut to shape. And the pedestal below that was also, you know, a piece of a table leg that was sitting around. So the pieces come from different places, but it was the idea of that object that, you know, sitting there like that, that was the thought you had to create.